yourself under my protection.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Let's put a smile on that face.
I'm touching myself tonight.
How can a woman possibly fight this?
There are two things I want to do. I want an American cheeseburger.
What's up, guys? Uz here from the DC vs. Marvel podcast, and this is another episode of The Trench where we grab a spade, jump down the rabbit hole, and dig even deeper. And this is obviously going out on audio like usual, but I also wanted to put out an impromptu video for you guys on the Voltron network with my review of Tenet. So it's a slight departure from the normal DC vs. Marvel podcast stuff. Now, we went to go and watch Tenet yesterday, as part of the Voltron network crew. A number of us, there was 3 of us there who basically went to go and see it. Christopher Nolan is without doubt one of my favorite directors. Well, he's my second favorite director behind Jim Cameron. And when Tenet was announced, I was really looking forward to it, man. I was like, okay, every single time I've watched a Christopher Nolan film, he's produced something that is, has an amazing concept there to it, stuff you go and see. We've mentioned in the DC vs. Marvel podcast, nowadays when I go and watch films, you're always looking for that one kind of amazing thing that the director might produce, and everybody talks about it, right? So Christopher Nolan is a master of that, always creating these little scenes that you see and you think, damn, that was amazing, right? So really looking forward there to it. Saw the first trailer, obviously, and it looked purposefully vague, right? Like all of his trailers are, in that he's trying to create a scene, right? He's trying to create something that is an incredible concept, and you don't want to spoil it, right? You don't want to spoil it before the audience gets in for the little twists and turns that he's going in. Every single kind of Nolan film is the same. The second trailer came out and it's the same kind of thing, same like purposefully kind of vagueness that is in there. And, I was looking at it, I was like getting more and more excited. Not only that, we've had a long time where we haven't had any films, right? In the UK, right? So, went to go and see this, and it was like the kind of big thing of like, okay, we're kind of going back to normal, right? Where, we're going back to our normal routines and stuff, right? So, went to the cinema. It was pretty packed in the IMAX with the Dolby Atmos and all that kind of stuff. Now, before I do my review, I had to put a little caveat on it, in that the way that we watched it, right, with the Dolby Atmos and the IMAX, the music, right, in this film was ridiculously loud, and it was also the dialogue was very booming, right? And what I mean by that is that it was very difficult to follow the dialogue, right? Now, the reason why I'm putting that as a caveat is because some of the things that I may be talking about in this in this review, people might say, well, he said that and he said that, but the thing is that I couldn't hear most of it, right? And I was speaking to some of my friends there, and I was like, the music is just crazy loud, right? Everybody agreed the same thing, right? It was just like the music was so overpowering that it was extremely difficult to understand the words. That doesn't matter in many of the Nolan films, because like I remember watching Batman Begins and it was the same kind of thing. But what happens in those films is that the action speaks for itself. So you watch the film, you watch the action, and it kind of is, you get the gist of the film there by watching the action. With something that is massively complex and relies on the dialogue has to be clear, right? So that's my caveat on this, right? So this film follows a very typical pattern of all the other kind of Nolan films. Well, what happens is you have a mystery that occurs. He puts this kind of scene at the start of every single one of his films, whether it's Dark Knight or Inception or Interstellar or whatever, which kind of introduces you to the world of what's going on, right? And, you're kind of like, okay, this is what's going on here. There's a mystery involved. The second part that he always puts in is the is the they're going to use the mystery, and they're going to use that mystery in order to discover in order to discover something that they can use for the third climatic stage, right? And when they get to the climatic stage, it's basically all of those mysteries culminate in this one stage, and all of the knowledge, all of the stuff that they've gained in order to fulfill that mystery culminates in that final state. So that happens in every single Nolan film, right? So you're kind of expecting that. Now, the concept of this, right? Okay, this is mildly spoilery, but I think, you can't really talk about the film without talking about this. The concept of this is basically that the concept of entropy, right? So always in terms of time, we're moving forwards, but there is a technology that exists in the future to make things go backwards, right? So what happens is that we may exist in this particular time. Somebody who is 100 years in the future may have sent something back into time, and we intersect at this particular time point. So they keep going backwards, right? And we keep going forwards, but at this particular point, we're at the same time. And their kind of thing is their time is running backwards, so everything runs backwards, right? So you might see birds flying backwards, or you might see bullets going backwards, and all this kind of stuff. So we're introduced to this concept where we see that somebody or something is sending these artifacts back into time. And what's happening is that the protagonist, Michael Washington, has basically got to find out who's sending these things, why are they sending them, what's going on, etc., etc. And there's very cryptic things that a lot of people say there to him in order for him to kind of go and discover what's going on. So the concept of it is great, right? I like that concept of it, that something's going back in time while something is going forward in time. The problem is what happens is that he tries to inject this kind of the mystery stuff, which is very Nolan-esque, the mystery stuff in the film, which makes you think, okay, who's doing this? Why are they doing this? Whatever. Okay. And there are so many ways that this could have been executed, but he goes for the wife of this billionaire oligarch guy, right? And basically she's being abused by him and being kept in the marriage, being blackmailed by him, and she's the key to understanding this mystery, right? The problem is not only is she very uninteresting as a character, the whole concept of it is just boring, right? Now, there are parts in this film in the first act where you look at it and we're introduced to some very interesting characters, right? One of the interesting characters is an Indian arms dealer, right? And we're introduced to her, and it's just like, I want to know more about that character. I want to know a bit more about how they made the money, how they do all this kind of stuff. But a lot of the stuff with her is glossed over to try and keep her mysterious, right? Try and keep her like, okay, a mystery character, because that obviously there's a payoff to that there in the end. Nolan also spends a lot of his time building up the main character in this, which is the uninteresting wife of this oligarch. Just keeps building this character up and makes you think, okay, I'm not really interested in this. So her entire kind of her basis for being is the fact that, she loves her son so much and wants to stay with her son, and basically is being blackmailed that, she can't be with her son. And they show very little of the relationship between her and her son, apart from the fact that she's trying to pick up her son from the, from school. And it's just like, okay, the son seems very disinterested in her, right? When they're together, it's not as if he's suddenly like, oh, look, there's my mom, and you're meant to assume that, okay, this is a mom who loves her son and she'll do anything for him. But you don't see that. You don't see any of that. And it's kind of just an assumption, right? So her motivation there is not, as strong as it could be. It's not as powerful as it could be. But Nolan really goes like deep into this character, right? the most uninteresting character in the entire thing, right? Whereas there are other interesting characters, like I said, such as the Indian arms dealer, well, we don't see a great deal of, and it's just like, okay, well, this character, this character is just there for the payoff. And the reason why he goes so much into this really boring character is because there's a payoff at the end that he just wants this one scene for this character to be in it to tie up all the loose ends, right? And to me, it's just the whole thing of that, and her whole motivation, and the whole thing of Michael Washington's character wanting to help her out and do all this kind of stuff. To me, that is all super weak, right? It's all super weak, and it just made me super disinterested. So the first act that I was watching, man, I was like super bored, and there were my friends were sitting next to, and you could hear like audible like like that, and just shifting in their seat, checking their phone. I've never done that in a Nolan film, man, but it was just like, it was so boring that I was just like, okay, I'm really not bothered with this. It starts picking up in the second act there a bit more when you kind of know a little bit more about the mystery, right? But by that time, they've spent so much time on that first act that when you get to the second act, right, it's like, okay, we're in the second act there now, and you're trying to resolve this mystery. However, the time has gone on so much. We're like an hour in at that point, right, or even more than an hour in at that point. That by the time the second act comes around, you're just like, okay, you're fatigued anyway. You're completely fatigued by it. But then when these interesting concepts come in, you don't find them interesting. You find them kind of boring, right? You find them boring. You find them disinteresting. And when you're introduced to these certain things, you're just kind of like, okay, just get on with it now. Just get on with it, right? There are certain parts of the mystery where all the pieces start to come together, where because they've spent so long on that first hour, they have to really rush through that second section. So the second act is like super rushed through, right? It's literally just like, okay, this happens, and it just happens one after another. One of the concepts, like I said at the start, is basically we go forwards in time, and somebody's got technology to push things back in time, right? So there are parts of the film there where it's like things are going forwards in time and things are going backwards in time, and you've got to make the assumption that this person or this object has passed through a time machine or whatever to go forwards or to go backwards. They show some people going through a time machine that means that they're meant to be going backwards, but at the same time they show all the stuff there that gives the indication that they're actually going forwards in time, right? And then the next scene, without them showing going back in the time machine, you shows them going backwards in time. So you've got to fill in the blanks of, okay, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here. And if you don't fill in those blanks there, then it's like, okay, this makes no sense. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And I don't want to go too much into it, because I don't want to spoil it, especially for the American people who haven't seen this, right? But there's so much of it in this where it's just like, okay, I've got to make an assumption that this makes sense and this makes sense and this makes sense. By the time you've got to that third act, and the third act is great, it's got a lot of kind of stuff there in it that is occurring. You're kind of looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, I've kind of seen this, and in other films where battle scenes are kind of occurring. And I totally understand that Nolan wanted to make his thing like as realistic as possible with minimal kind of visual effects and just make it so that, we were reversing film and stuff like that. And the concept is like absolutely fantastic. But I mean, for example, there's a car chase scene and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, well, Matrix Reloaded did this better, right? And, that wasn't a great film, but that car chase scene was freaking amazing, right? And I'm looking at multiple stuff like that is continuously occurring, right? Now, when I look at multiple stuff like this, I say to myself, well, okay, there's going to be a payoff here, and there is a payoff at the end. And the third act is, when I give my rating, I would say the first act is like 2 out of 10, the second act is like a 3 or 4 out of 10, and then the third act is like a 7 out of 10. But like I said, you've been so fatigued and so damaged by those first 2 acts, which are boring. They're actually boring, right? That when you get to the third act, you're like, okay, yeah, great, I love this, but it took so flipping long to go to this that it's just like, oh, you know, what is the point, right? So, you know, I look at that and I say to myself, well, you know, I love your concept, Chris, but like a lot of directors, right, whose minds go 100 miles an hour and are absolutely fantastic at producing films, right, and are visionary directors, a lot of them, they don't have a rain put on them. For example, like George Lucas did amazing stuff there for Fox. They were just like, mate, just, you could do whatever you want now. And then he went and made the prequels because that was what was in his mind. That was his mind unleashed, right? And you create something just completely random. It's like James Gunn. You know, James Gunn creates Guardians of the Galaxy, which is decent. And then they're like, have free reign to create Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and his mind's on acid, and it's just like, what the hell is this crap that you've created, right? So you know, you get that same kind of thing with many directors. But with Nolan, there's been no rain put on him. And it would have been great if somebody just said, do you know what, Chris? Dude, this first act is just dire. It's just dire, man. There's nothing to make me interested in this. You know, there's a scene like you see in the trailer where they're going and these terrorists are attacking an opera house. Like, I've seen that shit. I've seen that shit in James Bond. I've seen that shit in everything else. There's nothing amazing about this new concept. There's nothing great about this. I've seen this multiple times. The scene where you got the car chase, I've seen that in Matrix, right? So show me something new. Show me something cool. Show me something different. By the time you actually get to that, you've been fatigued by all the other stuff. So anyway, that's what I would say about, I give this film a 4.5 out of 10. You know, if it's got a decent concept, the execution itself wasn't great. Anyway, guys, you can let me know what you think. You can email us on dcvsmarvelpod@gmail.com, and you can also, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, leave your comments down below. Until then, guys, we'll speak to you again next time.